In 1977, 5-year-old Pete Healy is on a road trip with his parents when their car flips after nearly colliding with a deer. Pete's parents are killed, but he survives and is pursued into the forest by a wolf pack, then saved by a large dragon with wings, green fur, and yellow eyes. Pete and the dragon quickly bond. Pete names the dragon Elliot after the lost puppy character in his favorite book, and Elliot becomes protective of Pete. 6 years later in 1983, 11-year-old Pete spots a lumberjack crew chopping down trees near his home. Natalie, the daughter of ethical site foreman Jack, spots and pursues him. When she accidentally falls from a tree, her screams attract Jack and his girlfriend, park ranger Grace Meacham. Pete tries to run away, but Gavin, Jack's ruthless brother, accidentally knocks him unconscious. After realizing that Pete has vanished, Elliot stumbles around looking for him and ends up knocking over a tree near the lumber camp, leading Gavin to organize a hunting party to find him. Meanwhile, Pete awakens in a local hospital. He escapes and tries to return to the forest. Gavin and his men locate Pete and Elliot's treehouse, but when they try to search it, Elliot reveals himself and scares them away. He follows them to town trying to find Pete. When he sees Pete settling in with Grace's family, he leaves. Pete gives Grace a drawing of Elliot and she shows her father, Conrad, who says he discovered the same dragon as a young man. He advises her to trust Pete and find Elliot. The next day, Pete, Grace, Natalie, and Conrad travel to the forest to meet Elliot. A group of hunters led by Gavin surprises Elliot and shoots him with tranquilizer darts, then lock him up in Jack's warehouse. Before the authorities can inspect the dragon, Pete and Natalie free him from his chains and escape on a lumber truck with Conrad. Angered, Gavin sets up a roadblock at the bridge to stop them. When Elliot tries to fly, he crashes into the truck, damaging its brakes, and it goes through the barricade. Confused and frightened, Elliot perches on top of the bridge and starts breathing fire at the lead truck driven by Grace and Jack. The bridge begins to collapse under the intense heat, causing Grace and Jack's truck to fall through. Gavin then abandons his attack and tries to save them from death. Elliot emerges from the ravine with Grace and Jack riding safely on his back. With a firefighting helicopter approaching, Pete flees with Elliot back to the woods. Pete pleads with Elliot to let him stay so he can protect him from his attackers, just as Elliot protected him. However, Elliot concludes that as long as they stay close together, Pete will always be in danger. He points out Pete's book to encourage him to return to stay with Grace and Jack. Pete is reluctant and worried for Elliot's safety, but ultimately trusts the dragon's judgment. After a very tearful hug, Elliot returns to the mountains and Pete returns to live with Grace and Jack as his new family. In the years that follow, Grace and Jack marry and adopt Pete as their son. Not only has Elliot slowly faded from the town's memory, but Gavin has learned to be more scrupulous and has moved on from the experience. Pete and his family eventually go on vacation and see that Elliot is finally reunited with his fellow dragons.